Okay, yeah. Where, when did you meet?
Right, go on, you start with.
No, you start.
You start.
You started it.
You start. You started it. No,
You started it.
You asked me out. You started
She
it.
started it.
Matt started work at the SEC, and the very first day he got appendicitis. So he had to go went to the clinic, or they sent him to the clinic, and then he ended up in hospital, and I was a nurse on the ward. And I don't know how many days after he was in, he asked me out. And I thought, oh, he's a cheeky young bugger, because he looked only about 18. And so I went and checked the admissions book, and it said he was 21, I think, at the time.
Like you looked 18.
Yeah, he did look 18. He looked 18 till he was about 30. That's the trouble. Yeah. Anyway, he asked, when we arranged to meet at the movie theatre in Yallourn, when he got out of hospital, and Mum and Dad drove me down in their car, because of course very few people had cars, and definitely young people didn't have cars. So they drove me down to meet Matt at the pictures, and then he walked me home up the hill after the movies when he'd only been out of hospital that day. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. And you must have walked all the way back to down to actually pretty
Were
well.
you feeling all right, Grandpa?
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's right. He was. No, it wasn't even anything like that. And then Mum said she knew it must be love because I walked everywhere with him, because I'd had a couple of boyfriends, but I insisted they had a car.
Do you remember what car you had around at that time?
I didn't have a car.
Didn't have a car.
And
what was the first car you got?
Actually, she wanted me to buy a car. And I said, no, I'm not spending my money. I'm not wasting my money on a bloody car.
that was one of your first arguments?
No, we didn't
it
argue
wasn't
about
argue.
it. No, we knew that we wanted to get married. So
We started saving.
Matt proposed to me a month after.
No, in 6 weeks it was.
6 weeks was that we got engaged. Yeah, but you asked me to marry you before that.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. And then you probably had to save up.
You asked me. You
Yeah. Anyway, that was in your lawn in a rotunda behind the
pub.
Behind the pub. It was behind the.
Your lawn hotel.
So why that spot, Grandpa? What made you decide that spot was the spot?
Oh, he didn't ask. We just decided when we went. I went and chose the ring with him.
Okay,
yeah.
Like he's made it.
No.
How was it broached?
I can't even remember.
No, I would might as well get married. Better not.
Better make it legal. Yeah. No, I actually honestly cannot remember how the subject was broached. Yeah.
Okay.
You must have asked me.
Things were different in those days.
Yeah, they were a lot different, weren't they? Yeah. Don't know. Anyway, we went and we got engaged there. It was in a park actually, between the shopping centre and the pub.
Yeah.
And the rotunda was sort of a bit romantic, so that was nice in the gardens. Went on, yeah. Oh, first of all, had to ask Mum and Dad's permission, of course, those days.
Do you remember the conversation at all, Grandpa?
Yeah, old Bill Brown. He said, "Hey, is it all right if we get married?" He said, "Oh."
You're not Catholic, are you?
No, that wasn't his worry. He said, you can't get out of it after that, you know. You reckon? That's all he said.
Just that he didn't
You can't get out of it. Once you're married, you can't get out of it, you know.
Really? There you go.
In those days, there was no splitting up or divorce so much.
No, there was, but it was more rare. Yeah. Yeah, and then 12 months later, we wanted to get married fairly straight away. And Mum and Dad said no, and like I said to you the other day, that we knew they were right, really, because we needed to save up a bit. And then luckily, because Matt worked at the SEC, he was eligible to get one of these houses, cheap, which we bought for, you have to say now, I've forgotten the details.
£2,800 it was, but it was $4,000, and it ended up we're paying about $4,000 for a place.
Yeah, and we paid it off over interest per, what was it, what's the word? What's the word I'm trying to think
Fixed rate interest.
Fixed rate interest.
4% for 45 years.
For 45 years. And when Matt retired, we still owed $1,000 on it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's when he retired.
But we didn't have to pay that.
Yeah. Now you can tell me.
The SEC paid that off and finished.
Yeah.
Oh really?
You haven't heard that story. I'll go on the that's a bit interesting.
Well, the SEC was no longer there. The SEC was wound up. But they still had to.
They still own these houses.
They still own these houses and they own the payment system. You know, people were paying in, like a few people like me, paying in small amounts a week. That was hardly paying a bloke bloody $800 a week to bloody administer it. There was only about $50 coming in, so it wasn't worthwhile. And they wanted to get rid of it. So they said, they first tried. They came to the door here and said, obviously you'll pay the balance off in cash so we can get rid of the paperwork. I said, no way. I said, I've made arrangements to pay $4.48 a week from the credit union. That's all you're getting, you know. That's the contract. And then they said, and a couple of weeks later they came back and said, well, look, we'll pay half of it if you pay half what you own. So they paid half of it. And then they said, we pay all the legal costs for the transfer of the title. So it didn't cost us anything then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but in between times, they'd lost the title to the house.
The title officer had lost the title.
Well, the title officer had lost it.
It's very ironic, yeah.
And so, you know, it would have cost us thousands to get another one all written out and stuff, but they paid for it all. Because if we had to have done that, it really would have been thousands of dollars even then, you know. But they paid all of that. But we thought they'd forgotten about it because I think it took about 12 months, didn't it?
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah, about 12 months.
They had Melbourne solicitors had to
sort that out.
What actually happened, the title office that keeps all the titles of all the properties in Victoria was in Queen Street in Melbourne, and they decided just previous to that to shift to Geelong. And they opened an office in Geelong and shifted all holus polis to Geelong. And somewhere in the process, the SEC papers got lost. And they didn't exist. This house didn't exist, according to the title office. And the SEC reckons it did. And I had a copy of it, but the original is what you need to get a transfer. Your copies are not acceptable. So when I got a copy, I own it. No good.
Yeah. Anyway, that was sorted out.
Sorted out, but it took a long time.
Yeah. So there. Now then, what happened? We got married, and then 12 months later, your dad come along.
Do you remember what was? So have you gotten a car at this point, or as well?
Yeah, we had a car.
About 3 or 4 months after we got married, we bought an old Morris Oxford.
Morris Oxford.
Morris Oxford.
Four-cylinder, 1952 model, I think it was.
Can you remember the old Pommy movies, the old English movies, the round sort of taxis? A bit like that it was.
Black Morris Oxford.
Black Morris Oxford.
Side valve. It's called side valve engine.
And your dad was teaching me to drive. And I hit the accelerator and set the brakes, and in your lawn in the shopping centre they had rocks all piled up like to keep the cars away from the traffic. And I went doop, 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 up on top of all these rocks, and all the young fellas come out from the cafe. Yeah. There was a cafe there with my old friend Linny Wright from up Yallourn North. Yeah. I still see her. They come out and lifted it off for us, and you know there was not one bit of damage on the car.
Oh, really?
Just sat on top of the rocks.
Just sat on top.
I thought you were about to tell me that's how it broke down.
No, there was not one scratch.
Never broke down.
No, it just sort of must have climbed it more or less.
So was that sold? That's the way you just dealt with that?
Then we who did we sell that to?
I traded that in.
Oh, you traded it in
on an old Holden FB 1960 Holden.
Duck egg blue.
Yeah, real light blue hole. About yeah, light blue.
Duckhead blue, real pale
And
blue. Horrible.
When we bought it was second hand. We bought it in a car yard in your lawn. Guys, that used to be owned by
a priest.
By a minister.
Minister, yeah.
A church minister, he reckons. Oh, yeah, all bullshit. You know.
Yeah,
They used to all tell lies. We said, oh, yeah, tell us more, tell us more.
You pull the other leg.
And then a few months later, we went to Dave and Av, got married in Yannar.
Yeah.
And we drove the car down there, and they were married in the bloody Church of England bloody church in Yannar, and the car was parked out the front, and the bloody minister come out. Hey, who owns that car? That used to be mine. So the car yard hasn't told a lie after all.
No. So yeah, like I said, but then 12 months later, Doug come along. Yeah. And then I was very sick then. I was really, really sick.
Yep.
Yeah, poor Matt come home from work and, housework hadn't been done and that because I was just so sick. Couldn't even walk to the letterbox hardly without gasping for breath. And I used to have to sometimes get Keith Hall.
Sick from after the...
From asthma, like real bad asthma. I used to sometimes have to get Keith Hall, if he was home or someone, to take me over to the clinic and they'd give me a needle. Because you didn't have the drugs that they've got now, and make you breathe again, but you're going to get the shakes. Terrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ephedrine. It must have been pure ephedrine pretty well. I don't know, anyway, whatever it was.
Ephedrine is what it was called.
Ephedrine was
a heart starter, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of made you breathe a bit easier, but that was awful. I was really sick. And then they got better with the drugs.
Yeah.
So I was a bit better, and then Ian... 2 years later come along, 2 years and 2 weeks come along, yeah. And
when they were little,
both planned, like you wanted to have it in around that time, or
no,
didn't plan anything.
Dad told you, happened along. No, I was the one who he's devastated. He couldn't care less.
Yeah,
but
Dad cares.
But he didn't like the fact that he wasn't planned.
we drove that old car to Newcastle to see her uncle, her auntie, and on the way home we drove from Newcastle to your lawn.
Well, that was before we had Ian, wasn't it?
No, Doug. Remember, Doug was real.
Yeah, little like.
They were about sleeping on the back seat, and the back ledge in the car, behind the back seat against the window. We used to put a blanket there, and they used to sleep on there.
Yeah.
No seat belts or anything in those days.
Ian.
And Doug and Ian wanted a drink. Remember, Doug wanted a drink.
Yeah, Doug was thirsty. He kept saying, "I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty." And we run out of drinks in the car.
I didn't want to stop from Newcastle all the way to Ballarat. Not Bendy, Seymour. I ended up stopping finally for a drink, because.
Yeah.
We drove non-stop.
But then
and then he's down 2 big glasses of bloody...
He was poorly, like your dog, but he was, poor little fellow, he was sculling it, Blub, 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 blub. He must have been dying of thirst, poor little bugger. A mean bastard, wouldn't even stop. Yeah. And then another time we went on a long trip with the 2 boys when they were little, and your dad had promised them if they were good, the biggest part of the trip, that we'd buy Macca's. Was it McDonald's then, or was it no? It was Kentucky Chicken. They didn't have Macca's here then.
What sort of year are we talking about?
1960.
No, we were married in 61.
Yeah, but that was only 66, 65.
65.
Yeah, about 65, because Douglas would have been about 5 or 6.
Does KFC taste much different from now, from then?
Pardon?
I wouldn't
Does
know,
KFC
darling.
taste?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't tasted it since then. I haven't been.
But that was funny too. We stopped somewhere, and it was closed. And the poor kids, you promised you'd get it for us. You imagine 2 little kids, 4 and 6 or whatever. And anyway, so Matt pulled up at the next place, and we went in. And he got someone else's order. He come out and he had this great big tub of...
We stood in the queue and I went for 2 pieces of chicken or something.
Yeah,
and
The lady
Yeah,
said,
there was a queue of about bloody 20 people, and I was sitting in the queue. And when I got to pick my order up, they gave me a bucket. And I, thank you very much, and I walked out
You were just like,
yeah, thank you.
into the car.
Off we went, quick.
Yeah, how much went you?
So the boys got plenty of Kentucky, didn't they? Yeah,
And the person behind next to it.
yeah, probably got your 2 pieces.
I ordered the bucket.
yeah, 2 pieces.
Yeah, something's gone wrong here. Yeah, that was that. What else happened traumatic when the kids were little? Then 5 years later? No, Douglas was 10, so 10 years later.
Somebody ran over Doug's legs.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, what happened there?
Oh, yeah,
They
Doug
were
used to
building the corner shops, you know, the corner
where
shops.
your friends are, yeah.
And they just started the foundation, and on the footpath they had a great big pile of sand to mix into concrete. And
Douglas
of course,
was playing in
Doug
it.
was, he was
Yeah.
playing in the sand, and there was a bloke with a work youth that Doug set his feet under the sand, and he's sitting there playing. He didn't see, and he run over his legs. Yeah.
Yeah, and he come home and he said, oh, my leg's sore. So I took him over to the clinic, and the fellow had a look, and but he only looked at one leg.
Yeah, because
and I never thought to look at the other leg because he was complaining about the the right one. Anyway, when I went to give him the bath that night, the other leg was black and blue.
the doctor looked at one leg and said, "Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
bruised, but
yeah,
it'll be all right,
but
not
it's
broken."
not broken. He never tested the other one.
And the other one was the colour of that thing,
Yeah,
the
I know.
colour
He
of
was
that
purple,
vest.
poor little
vest.
bugger. Yeah, but luckily he was in the sand, see, and that cushioned his legs. Otherwise, the weight of the ute would have broken them.
So not broken.
No, they weren't broken. Just they were badly bruised. But it took him a while. Had to be careful when I was wiping him because he still needed to be helped, dried and all. He was still only a little kid,
Yeah.
getting out the bath. Yeah, poor little bugger. But then. He never was adventurous like Doug, because Doug used to take off. I'd be bathing, and like I said, I was sick then too. I'd be bathing, giving Ian his bath or something,
And Doug had already had his
take
bath.
off, and he
Doug
used
would
to
be
climb
walking up
over
the
Matt
street.
Biddlefeld's fences and everything. No, he was off over the top, and I used to smack him with the wooden spoon, and he'd see me coming, just a lightweight one, but so I used to whack. You bad boy, I told you to stay home, That's why I wasn't that up for child abuse. Anyway, and then one day I accidentally whacked myself. I went to whack him on the bum, and I missed it, hit my own thigh. Oh, and it stung, so I thought, I better not do that anymore. Yeah. Little bugger. But he used to do it every time. I don't know, escape artist he was. And same if I was like, and then I'd get on the phone too. We had a phone then, by the time Ian come along. We had the phone, I'd be on the phone and Douglas said, gone. Yeah.
We were the first ones in the street to have a phone.
Phone.
One of those dial,
Yeah,
the one you put your finger in
the
there.
movies.
Called on my brownie.
In the corner there
Yeah,
behind
that's
the
right.
where the TV is
Yeah.
now. And when people found out about it,
Yeah.
they used to come from all over. Oh, nobody had a phone.
My
They
mum
need a
said, "Can I ring her up and say-"
They ring up, they knock on the door.
I'll
Can I
pay
use
you,
the phone? Can I use the phone? Some of them pay.
Yeah.
Because it was expensive in those days. You had to
Pay per call, of course.
pay per call, and
Yeah.
also the time if you kept on yakking like women do. It cost you a fortune.
It used to, that nearly
Like early
cost.
cell phone bills too.
Oh, your dad and mum nearly got divorced over their first phone bills because your mum would ring
Calling Philippines.
Philippines all the time. Yeah.
Now there's no
Yeah,
problem.
but anyway, that
People don't know how well the phones are today. Once you've got a pub, you don't have that problem of calls.
No, well, even when we first got our mobile, you had to pay per call.
Yeah.
I remember your mum, there used to be a public phone box, the phone box in Virway Street in Moe somewhere.
We're getting
Something
slightly
went wrong.
sidetracked.
You had to put money in it, coins in the slot to dial, and to get an overseas call. Somehow it malfunctioned, and you could dial overseas
not pay.
and get connected, and you could talk for hours, and it didn't it didn't connect. Yeah, didn't charge you,
Yeah.
and people found out about it, and of course that what Filipinos like, they tell one another, and the next thing there'd be a queue. There was a queue.
Yeah, they told
queue-
on themselves because they lined up around the
Queue of
corner.
people waiting outside the box to do overseas
And they'd be getting
calls.
cross with one another because one was talking too long. You know, they'd say, "Come on, old my turn." Yeah, that was a bit of a sidetrack, wasn't it?
So we went from
From-
phones.
We went to when we had Ian.
Yeah, you had the first phone. What about your tally too? Like when
Oh, telly we didn't get for
That was
ages.
a good one. That's a good one. We had a black and white. Her
Uncle.
cousin or
Cousin. No,
uncle,
cousin,
second cousin called Keith Cam. You met him? Can you remember?
You would
him?
have in the past, but it doesn't matter,
I'm
don't
just
it?
really bad.
He had a little TV shop in Newborough. He sold TVs,
Oh, and
and he used to
goods.
started off. He sold sporting goods as well, shotguns and ammo and fishing gear and TVs, and he was radios and that, and.
He wasn't very organised.
He used to, and in those days you buy a TV and they had valves in them, like the globes behind them, the black and white TV. You were lucky to get a new TV, you're lucky to get 3 months out of them, and then
No,
they'd
that's
blow.
not quite true.
Well,
Yeah, about a year.
they'd start popping
The
the
valves.
valves and blowing up.
So they would constantly need to be repaired.
Always
Yeah.
need to be repaired. And Keith was always running behind. As soon as you brought TV back, he'd say, "Oh shit, I'm
busy."
They'd be stacked up to the roof in the shop, all these TVs waited to be repaired. And he'd say, "You grab that one,
You have a lend old box.
have a lend of this one while you're waiting for me to fix it," you know. And that happened to us. We bought a TV off him, and 3 or 4 months later, it popped a valve or something went wrong. Took it back, and he said, "Oh, there's another one in the box, still
brand new one,
brand
yeah.
new one. Take this one, while I fix yours."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I only really wanted to watch the grand final." He said, "Okay, you use this one," and I took the new one home. I
Left.
plugged it in. I watched the grand final and the next grand final on that. Still wasn't fixed.
I think we had it for 2 years.
Yeah,
didn't we?
in fact,
While he was
then,
repairing.
Yeah.
then that new one broke down. We had to take that one back. Which one are you going to fix, mine or yours?
Yeah, no, but
He was always running
He
behind.
was a shocking businessman. Absolutely no idea. He had a little gold mine there. Had he had someone
Yeah.
with a bit of organisational skills,
And then
because
when-
there was no Kmart or anything. There was no competition for him. He
No
was the
Harvey
only
Norman or anything.
Only electrical repair place in just about from here to Warragul, just about, you know. And so he was busy, but he should have got an apprentice, or his wife had they had a family though. But I mean, someone that had a bit of knowledge of organisational skills. Although he did do that once, and the lady come in, she tidied the shop, and he couldn't find anything. He said that didn't work out.
You've never seen a shop like it.
Oh yes, he has. Oh dear. Yeah, but he knew where stuff was, obviously. But you walked in, you just, oh my God, because you had to walk between the things that were needing
To get to
repairing.
the counter right at the back of the shop.
Yeah. But then we got the tally. Then what was the next move on the blackboard? The boys just grew up, did all the boy things, you know, brought home animals on, brought a brown snake home on a bit of corrugated iron one time. "Oh, look, Dad, look what we brought home." They went, because they just used to wander,
Yeah.
you know, all day. They'd just take off. And we'd say, "Oh, you've got to be in by dusk,"
Yeah.
you know, and I'd make them a sandwich and a bottle of cordial or something, and they'd take off all day on the
Do you
bush
remember
boats.
what their favourite meals were when they were kids?
Um,
Did they have one that they were asking for?
Well, your dad?
They weren't as fussy as what.
No, they were pretty good actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
Mm.
They didn't like silver bees.
Who does?
Surprise, Grandpa! Surprise, surprise! Yeah.
Even Hudson doesn't like silver.
No, he don't like that green stuff. I don't like it, the green. Yeah.
And the red, he reckons.
And the red, yeah, that's right, and the red now it is too.
I don't like the green and the
But
red.
the red, the favourite things. Oh, I know. Uncle Ian, your Uncle Ian, used to love veal schnitzel, like a bit like chicken schnitzel, only it was made from veal. Yeah, he used to love that. And I think your dad's was always sausages. He used to
Always
love-
sausage. Well, yeah, that's something that he's.
I think he still, yeah, I think he just,
Sausages
his
is still
favourite
his
sausages, yeah. Yeah, because he didn't eat steak until he was older, because we couldn't afford it for starters, it was too expensive. Because I used to have a strict budget when they were growing up, because Matt, we spent, I suppose that's the word. Matt was doing overtime, and we bought a couple of things, and then when overtime finished, he was working on a big project, and they were doing a lot of extra work, and so the pays were big, and then all of a sudden that stopped, and of course we'd bought a couple of things on time payments, and we were a bit broke, and so I used to have to write down a weekly menu of what to get, and like I said, the only treat was a bit of sponge cake on shopping day, and a little plant, and a car each for the little matchbox for the boys. That was the only things we could afford for a while, long time. Then things got better. But I never went to work until Leanne left home. No, Leanne was still home.
What did you go back to work to? Like, what did you do?
Cook in the kitchen at the hospital.
Okay, so you went back to doing that.
Yeah. Well, I was a nurse to start years ago,
Back to the hospital,
and I could have gone back as a nurse, but I would have had to go down to Melbourne and retrain for 12 months.
Yeah.
And Leanne and the boys were in that sort of dangerous age a bit. I didn't like to leave them to their own devices, so I thought no, I didn't do that. So I went and I applied for a job in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I worked in there for 3 years. I loved it, but not bad money. Like a shift work too. She had early shift and later shift.
Yeah.
And then I was on the part where they put the meals on the trays and all to start with, and then they called Ganymede, and then all through the big washing machine things, like dishwashing thing. You'd have to scrape the food off and put them on and they'd go through this big thing and then take them off and put them away.
Yeah.
That was part of it, and then deliver all the meals to the wards and so forth too. But then, because they saw I was handy in the kitchen, I've become sweets cook. And I did that for a year, 2 years.
What, just doing sweets?
Yeah, just making sweets all the time. Yeah, I used to have a great big rolling pin like that. And I used to laugh when I retired, and I'd have our own little one that was like this, and I used to just run out here. Yeah.
So that's Grandpa Brownie you're talking about?
Yeah, Grandpa Brown.
Yeah, my dad.
He lived moved in next door, in the house next door here.
Yeah.
We bought it from the people who were in there because we originally thought we'd move in there and do some renovations.
Yep.
And then we decided no, we weren't going to do that. And by that time, your lawn was said that they were closing down, they're getting rid of the township. So we said to Mum and Dad, would you like to come and live next door? Because Dad was 14 years older than Mum.
Yeah.
And we thought she's likely to be left, which she was. I think, how long was it after Dad died she was there? Yeah. Anyway, we said, if you come over and live next to us, which they did, they got a bit of money for if they had to move from your lawn.
Yeah.
So they put that into a little bit of the cost, and then we put the rest of it and bought next door, and they lived in there for, I think Dad was there 10 years and Mum was there 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Before she died, yeah. But so they were there a long time.
He was working on a shotgun. He always used to repair guns and rifles. He would have been right up your dad's alley.
Yeah.
And he's working on a shotgun in there, and to put the shell in and extract it, he used a blank, but for the final try, to make sure it was working, he put a live shell in it for the extra weight. And he put the shell in the shotgun, and it
misfired,
and it fired, and it blew a big hole in the side door, in the door of the car. His car was parked in there.
Yeah, but and the table that he was, We'd bought a table, like a coffee table for the lounge.
It was still in the pack,
And it was
flat
still in the
pack.
pack. He said, oh, well, he was going to stain it for us.
Yeah.
And that hole's all shot in the top of it.
All
You never
shotgun pellets
You
in it.
never saw a car get repaired so quickly. Because he just painted it because it was an old car. He just painted the... But he did a bloody good job of filling it, though, didn't he?
Yeah.
But, oh, boy, it was nearly done that afternoon.
He went
He was so
straight.
embarrassed.
He went straight into Moe. He got fiberglass and bloody tape and bloody sandpaper and bloody filled it all up. You know.
He did too. And Dad was like Maddie's now, quite deaf.
Yeah.
And he used to fart going up the drive, and of course he didn't realise that I could hear him because I'd be in the kitchen with, and he would have died of embarrassment had he known, because he never ever would do anything like that, not even in front of Mum. I don't.
He wouldn't
think.
say bloody. You
No,
know,
no, and he rarely swore too.
Only if he was by himself in the
yeah,
shed.
same thing. I'd hear him out in the shed, and but I think the worst, I'd never heard him say fuck or cunt. It was more bloody.
I'm Australian.
Yeah, I think he more said bloody more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd hear him, something would go wrong on the gun he was working on, and I'd hear him swear. But the fart bit was funny. I'd hear him walking up the drive, letting go. Like I said, I felt like knocking on the window and said, "Hey!" But I know he would have died. He would have been so embarrassed. He was a very gentle man, my dad.
Yeah, well, from the sounds of it, that's the
Yeah, he was, but he was and very easygoing. But people used to use him because of it, sadly. Like he'd repair guns for people that could afford to pay far more than he would charge them, you know? Like
okay.
there was one businessman in Morwell used to bring all his guns to him to be repaired, and Dad used to charge him peanuts because he spent hours because he did everything by hand. You know all the checking they have on the butts, like the fancy work on the, not the engraving, but the checking sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He used to do all that by hand. It used to take him hours, and he'd build springs and things, same thing from a bit of old scrap metal or something. And that fella, Dad should have said to him, look, this, I'll have to charge you a bit more, but he never did. He used to say, oh, but it was, what was it? He used to like to be able to say that old Mr. Maryvale used to come and get his guns repaired at his place. But who cares, money's more important. He got no thanks. If he went and bought stuff in the shop, he would have charged him just the same. He wouldn't have given him a discount, I bet.
Yeah.
But that was just Dad. Can't help your nature, I guess.
Any other? So, what was his full name?
Bill Brown.
William was his name, really.
William Brown?
Yeah, William Edwin Ware Brown. How's that? William.
What about?
Dad's got a photo of him on the wall at home. You know that oval one near the door?
I think. What is Grandma Brown's first name?
Isabel.
Isabel.
Yeah.
What about Isabel Brown? Do you have any Isabel Brown stories?
I've got a story about Bill Brown. He was,
We'll continue on with Bill Brown.
his mate was Smith and Brown were in the car and got pulled out by the cops. And the cop said, "What's your name?" "Bill Brown." And the cop said the other way, and I suppose your name's Smith. And he said, "Yes, it is."
Yeah. Oh, there's another story about Dad. No, that was Grandpa. No, that's not relevant. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, would you? Bill Brown and Wayne Smith. George Smith. Sorry, George Smith. His dad. Yeah.
Any other Will Brown stories? How do you remember him acting? How he was? Any stories with him and the kids, or?
He loved them to bits, but he sort of was never very like. He never gave me a cuddle or anything.
Yeah.
Don't know why, but he just maybe those days.
He was a bit old. He always smoked a pipe.
Yeah.
And he'd always be mumbling, telling stories. Once you got talking, he'd like her.
Ramble.
You can't stop him.
Ramble.
Was there any story that he would go back to, like that he would tell a lot?
I used to tell his story about working on the silo, on the roads when the Depression was on. They used to work on the roads, and he used to put newspaper in the bottom of his shoes because they had leather soles, and of course because they were working on gravelly stuff, they'd wear through. and they couldn't afford to replace them, so they
With
used to
cardboard in them.
They
or
used to
something.
put cardboard or newspaper if they couldn't get cardboard in to sort of try and keep their feet a bit dry. It must have been tough times then, actually.
Oh, so what was the work that he was doing again? Sorry.
On the roads, like road gangs, like you see in the American movie
Like building
things.
roads.
Yeah, making roads. Yeah, yeah. Then no machines and things like they got now. I didn't do that for very long.
Yeah.
That was in the worst part of the Depression, I think.
Yeah.
And then, because luckily his parents had a little farm up at Nuggety, the one we went and saw recently.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that was Dad's parents, and they used to go up there and get vegetables and things from them a bit because they grew their own stuff. So they had a bit more to eat. And then Dad went and worked on the silos up somewhere. Where we went there, can't think where it was. Up the Mallee somewhere anyway, away from Mum. Mum went up in the train to see him once
Yeah.
when I was little, and the people were amazed because I was toilet trained and I was one. They thought I was a very clever little girl. I remember Mum used to say that.
What about Isabel Brown?
Mum was, she just lived at home because her mum was always sick. And so her and the boys and Grandpa was away in the army, and so they used to have to cook and clean the house and all that the family did while Grandma was incapable.
Yeah.
And then when Grandpa come home, he didn't do it either still, and he was an old bastard. He treated them like they were like the soldiers sort of, bossed them
really?
around. And he used to, if the boys played up, he used to take them out the back and make them box him, and of course he belted them. He didn't just hold back, he'd thump them. Yeah, and the boys just hated him.
Yeah.
Anyway, when Evan, that was the eldest brother of Mum's, grew up, he went into the army himself. When he come back, he was tough, and he smart-mouthed Grandpa. Grandpa said, "Righto, out the back," and Evan belted the shit out of him.
You've got to hide.
Yeah, and Alex said, "Oh, Jan," she said, "I couldn't believe it. Thank goodness the old bastard was getting what he dished out to us all those years."
So like he would leave them bloodied.
Yeah, he really belted them.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
he'd be like, oh, we're boxing.
Yeah, no, I'm the boss. You do as I say. He didn't whack them till they were quite old. Because they were frightened of him. Mum used to say when Grandpa walked in the room, they'd sort of all get all tense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was really mean, sort of. Yeah. And then Mum went to work when she got her teeth out when she was 19, I think, because they had 5 kids, so they couldn't afford for them to go to dentists and things.
Yeah.
If they did go, all they did was pull them out those days.
Yeah.
And so Mum had her teeth taken out because she wanted to have nice teeth to get married. So she got her teeth out, and she had to go to work. She worked for a lady as a domestic in a house for 4 and 6 or something a week, and that was early in the morning till dusk.
Mm-hmm.
Bastards, the rich, using the poor,
Yeah.
and that Mum had to pay her own false teeth. Yeah.
And
And I don't know whether they had a reception for their wedding, Mum and Dad. They had a nice wedding. One of her friends made the dress. Another one was a hairdresser. She did Mum's hair.
yeah.
Must show you a photo of Mum's wedding photo. She looked lovely. Really pretty lady. And Dad was quite handsome too, actually.
Yeah.
I've got that in there somewhere.
You got those photos?
Yeah, I've got them. Yeah, nice photo. There. Because Dad, like I said, was a lot older than Mum, so he still was handsome when they got married. Well, he would have only been 30. Your age when they got married. Mum was only 21. Grandma and Grandpa said she wasn't allowed to get married till she was 21. But Dad was 14 years old, so that'd make him older than that. He'd be a bit older than you, but not much.
Yeah.
That's young, really, when you think of it, isn't it?
Your parents, Grandpa, what are the full names for both of them?
Same as mine.
Matthias?
Yeah.
Adrian
Adrian with double A at the end.
at the end.
And do you have any Give us a glimpse. Tell us about them. I don't really know too much about them, to be honest. So fill me in.
Oh, there's a lot. I don't know whether there's a great. Yeah.
Oh, they went through a hard time because they went through the war years, and Dad was taken prisoner of war. Was he prisoner of war?
Not a prisoner
Not
of
a prisoner
war.
of war, but they made him work.
Prison, like that.
What would you call him? They took him away and he had to work in a factory.
Like a labour camps. You
Like
know,
a
they had
labour,
forced labourers. They
Yeah.
forced labour that way.
And Mum was left home with the kids. How many kids
Well,
were there?
how long was that? For how long?
He actually went there a few times because the first time he worked at a shipyard, and right at the beginning of the war, the Germans took over the shipyard, and then they were the boss. You know, they took the shipyard over, and they said, now it's part of the German shipyard, so they used to send people over to Germany, to Hamburg, to work there for a few weeks or a couple of months, and then you get allowed to come back because they were busier in the yard where they normally worked.
In Holland.
And that happened a couple of times, but then the third time, somewhere in 1943 or something it was, while Dad is in Germany, working in the shipyard, they had
bombed?
a bombing raid with nearly 1,000 bombers bombed Hamburg, firebombed it, and that whole town was obliterated, and the shipyard wasn't badly damaged. It was just on the edge of it.
Yeah.
And there was columns of people that just walking out of the town. It was a big city, so they were just all bloody getting away from it. And my dad just picked up his bloody bag and he walked out with him. And he came home. He knew, because he'd been there a few times, he knew exactly
how to get home.
So he went to the next town, and then he got to the next town, and then he got onto the train, and he knew which trains to catch and what buses and trains.
Yeah.
And he had a certificate that he's allowed to travel because he'd been back and forth, and so he never went back.
Yeah.
But then he couldn't go back to his job very well because they would have
Known who he was, that he was escaping.
Knew he was. So he just really forgot about that, and he started doing just odd around the town, odd jobs, you know, like he had mates that worked there, and then he got work here and there, and but then all of a sudden the Germans blocked off in the whole area, and they had a forced, a roundup. They used to block up a city block or a town block to block off all the streets, and then they knock on all the houses and check who was living there. And if you're between 18 and 46 or something, or 18 and 50, he put on the truck and they take it to Germany to work again. You were only and then you're really prisoner. You couldn't work any. And he was there till the end of the war. He couldn't get away from that.
Oh really? So,
no, that was.
So wait, so you were still there at the end of the war?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were starving.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Do you remember the day that the war ended?
Yeah.
You do?
I can remember before the war ended, because what had actually happened, I had a little sister, and the first time when Dad come home from when the Hamburg was bombed, that's why I know when that was, in the summer of '43, when Hamburg was bombed. He came back, and he was only home a few weeks or a couple of months, and my little sister died. She had leukemia. And
he was home when that happened.
Yeah, he was home.
Oh, that was
He'd
good.
just
Mum
come
had him
home for
there,
that.
at least.
What
Yeah.
age was she?
3.5.
3.5.
But she was bigger than me. She was.
How old were you?
I was 7. I was 5 or 6. 5.
Yeah, he was only little.
5. I was little and she was big, so we were nearly the same height.
Oh, really?
And then people always reckoned that we were twins.
Yeah.
And then Mum used to put her clothes on me.
Yeah.
So I was dressed in girls' clothes sometimes.
Yeah, well, they didn't
When
have-
I was little kids, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
And people always said, oh, they're two twins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they probably didn't have the money to buy clothes anyway if it was during the war.
No,
probably couldn't get
No,
'em.
you just
They do with whatever
made
you
your
had.
own and left. Yeah.
Hand down.
I can remember my mum. You know the stuff that you use in the garden,
Hessian.
the stuff that you tie plants with in the garden, the balls you buy for $2 a string, garden string. You seen those balls?
No, well,
You
you
see
would
the
have.
$2
Yes, you would
shop?
have.
My mum made knitted socks out of those for me. I had a pair of socks made.
Oh, they must have been prickly.
Plastic socks.
No, not plastic. They were twine, like the hessian
like
sort
a
of stuff, the
twine,
brown stuff.
but
you
it's
know?
prickly as shit.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
It's
very uncomfortable.
They used to say they make the priests when they wanted to punish themselves and they'd wear shirts made out of that stuff.
Oh, really?
You know,
Yeah.
prickly, yeah. Yeah. But mum was making, and she used to unpick the flour sacks and make singlets and things too during the war, so they'd have something to wear.
Things got really bad towards the end. Like food-wise, the first few years were hard, but you could still buy the basics
Rationed a bit.
and they were rationed, but enough to get by. But towards the end, like as soon as the D-Day invasion, you've heard of the D-Day invasion?
You would have
when
seen
they
that
came
on the
across from
movies.
England and the Americans and the British came in across into France. They had a blockade on the coast. There was no more trains, no more traffic, and the Germans, whatever food there was sent to Germany, and we had
Nothing much.
street FA.
Yeah.
And I can remember my mum having sort of like a stale loaf of bread, and in the evening she'd cut 4 or 5 slices, and there was four kids and her, and you're allowed to look at it, and she put them all on he made a game out of it. She put them all on the table,
Try and choose
and
the biggest
in
bit.
the evening you say which one was yours, and then in the following morning they'd light a little stove with a bit paper and a few sticks to like a little pot belly to get it hot, and then you could toast that slice all in turn. Yeah. And that was it.
That's all you-
Toasters.
Just
one
toast
piece
slice
of
of
toast.
bread.
Yeah. They had very little food.
That-
They would have starved. Only they had an uncle that was sort of blind, and he worked in the soup kitchen like they had, and they used to send
pinch a bit of stuff,
They
yeah.
used to send, like you see in the poor countries now, go along with their little tins. Mum used to send Matt sometimes, and the uncle was blind. He used to feel in the bottom of the thing and get any little lumps of meat that might have been in the bottom, and give them to them.
Yeah, but that was only once a week.
Yes, I know.
Go
I
for
know,
the-
yeah, but it was more than other people got.
Yeah.
And then he used to have some fruit in his garden too. They used to sell at the black
right.
market, but they used to hop over the fence and steal. And that's the pear tree that was still there. We told you about, I think, when we went to Holland.
Yeah, true.
Matt said, "Come and have a look. This is where."
I used to pinch the pears, you know.
Alma Lane used to live along here, and there used to be a pear tree at the back on this lane, and we used to hop over the fence. And the bloody pear tree's still there, you know. And I know they lived that long because out in the old farms we used to drive when we were kids with Mum and Dad. That's something we used to do for a Sunday's entertainment. We'd go out and we'd pick blackberries or the fruit trees in the old farms. You just hop the fence and you'd go and pick apples off the tree or a fig tree or whatever trees they had there that were just sort of left behind by the farmers.
Yeah.
You'd just go and help yourself.
When we came here in 1960, you wouldn't recognise the area. You know, all the paddocks where you see cows and from say Warrigal to Sale, there's paddocks everywhere. It was all dense forest.
Yeah.
Everything round your lawn here was
yeah.
all wood, all trees. There was no green grass at all. It was It was all dense forest everywhere. But from around your lawn north and between Maul and Terrelgan and Moe a little place, your lawn a little place, but there was no bare paddocks at all. It was all timber. And then in those days they paid people to clear it, you know. Even the SEC, they were that frightened of fire. they cleared,
Fire breaks.
cut down all the wood, all the trees that were there.
Did
And
they?
now they're going back to trying to replant some of them.
Yeah. So all very different. Very. The roads down to Melbourne were terrible. We used to dread when we went up to Malden. We used to go up there for holidays, like to Mum and Dad's parents' old place. We used to go up there for holidays sometimes, and you dread getting behind a big truck because no way you could overtake, because there'd be a lot of oncoming cars, and by the time you got around, because the cars didn't have the grump they've got now, you know, by the time you got out and around, you'd be crashing.
And they're all narrow
so you'd
roads.
be stuck for miles and miles and miles behind a big truck.
And the roads are all like that. They're all narrow.
Windy
They're
and
no freeways.
just shocking.
So when was it? When did they get when they like
We'll get
that
better
fixed?
roads.
Yeah, when did the better roads?
Well,
Oh,
just-
not
not really
from
bad, the
about
last-
67, in 1980s, 70s, 80s,
I
the
reckon
roads
the
started
last
to improve.
20 or 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Yeah, about 30 years ago they started to get vastly improved. To start with, they'd have a few overtaking lanes, you know, so that at least the big trucks could get out of the way and you could get past them.
Yeah.
That was the first thing they did. That helped a lot. Then they started cutting out some of the nastier bends. Yeah, and
As soon as you got off that Princess Highway, you were in the gravel. You know, like all the other roads are nearly all gravel roads around there. You know?
No, none of them were sealed. And you used to break a lot of windscreens in the cars because a car would go past and they'd throw a stone. They still do that occasionally, but not like they used to. Good old times. I don't think. No, but everybody was the same.
Yeah.
You know, not
In the old cars, people used to put in front of the windscreen another screen with fly wire.
yes, to stop the
Very fine chicken wire in front of the windscreen, about a bit of couple of inches space between it, so your stone didn't hit the glass.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot them.
Yeah. And then the plastic ones came in. You could get a bloody plastic screen, like a hard plastic, and clip it on in front of the windscreen.
Yeah.
Oh, the windscreen saver.
Yeah, and
you know?
it was far enough away that the windscreen, the wipers should still use.
Yeah, but in
to
front
stop
of the wipers, yeah.
But to stop
Spaces.
the stones from bouncing off the bonnet onto the windscreens, because it was just a regular occurrence with people.
No,
If you
you're
went
lucky
away
to-
for a holiday, you were likely to do a windscreen, and they're quite expensive too those days.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they are still now, but I mean, in comparison, they're probably more expensive then because
Just
people
always stones hitting windscreen.
yeah, they. We're reminiscing and we're getting all over the place. But
That's good. Because we'll do this so many times, growing up, like it will just go all over the place all the time.
yeah.
Only I hope I remember if we say a story for the third time.
Yeah, well, I remembered that I told you about one thing then. Yeah.
But it's fine. We can repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
Like the.
Well, that's the good part. You can cut them out, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. And
When you edit it, as they say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what about? So, what?
We got to married and we got the thing,
Married.
and then we decided we'd like a little girl.
Yeah.
So
So how was the process? What was the process?
well, the process was applying to we knew friends that had adopted 2 or 3 children. Lionel Briggs.
My boss at work.
Yeah, they'd adopted 2 children. 2 or 3.
Three or four, I think, and finished.
No, 3.
Yeah.
It was 3. They adopted, and so we knew who to approach. And there was a Salvation Army place down in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we got it.
We got the address off him,
Yeah, oh, that's
and
right.
I wrote a letter.
And they would recommend us, like they said, that we'd be suitable parents for a baby. So we wrote, and then we had to go down and be interviewed, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then we had to have the minister come here and have a look at the house.
And the thing was,
And we had to go to church for
the
a
thing
little
was,
while.
for a start, because it was a Salvation Army place,
Yeah.
they said, oh, unless you're a churchgoer, you know, you haven't got a hope. We never go to bloody church, and so we play along with it, you know. So
Mum.
we heard that in Mum's church, Mum said her mum used to go occasionally.
No, Mum used to go regularly.
Yeah. And she said, "Oh, we're getting a new minister coming to the church." Now ours is
In
going.
your lawn?
No, it was in Newbury.
Oh.
And I thought, wow, that's just what we need. So I went, as soon as he was there, I went and knocked on the door. I said, "Oh, we are buddy.
We've moved from your lawn.
We moved from your lawn. We're all parishioners here, you know. Pleased to meet you." Oh, well, and he was all, come in. And I said, "Oh," and of course, and I don't feel like asking. I said, but I really need your help already, you know. And he said, "What for?" We need a reference for to say that we're good parishioners for the Salvation Army for an adoption.
Not the Salvation Army, darling, Methodist.
And he met, the Salvation Army was the house.
Yeah, I know, but he wasn't.
He was a Methodist minister.
Yeah.
He said, "I'll give you a good reference. I'll give you a good reference." So he wrote out. So he wrote out the bloody reference that we've been going there for years and years.
Yeah.
No, he didn't say that. He didn't
More
say
as
that.
implying that he knew that we were good people and all that sort of
He
stuff.
come and had a look at he come down and had a look at the house and asked me a few questions. I always remember one of them was he asked me where our water supply come from.
Did he?
Yeah.
I can't even remember meeting him. And
I can remember meeting him. He said, "Dear, where's your water supply?" He's just seeing how much local knowledge I had, I think, or how intelligent I was, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I knew, luckily.
And then we took.
Did you see him afterwards?
No, I'll never go back again.
No, you didn't, but I did. He dipped out, but I used to go occasionally.
Yeah.
I even joined the.
Felt guilty, you
We
know.
even joined the church
Women's
friendship club.
The women's club or
really?
something.
Yeah.
How was that?
It wasn't bad actually. They were quite nice ladies, just a bit religious, you know.
Yeah.
I just bit my tongue and went along there, and they were quite nice people. They used to have, different nights for different things.
Yeah.
And then what did we pick up Leanne in a shopping basket or something on the back? We went the old car.
No, we had not a shopping basket. We had a bassinet.
That's a mess and that on the back seat,
Yeah.
on the back seat of the car,
Yeah.
just sitting there loose, you know,
No,
to pick
you
her
had
up
a
at the,
seatbelt over it.
just put at the home.
Probably would have choked her if we'd had us to stop suddenly. But I always remember the lady that passed Leanne over to us said she'd never seen a man so anxious to get his hands on the little bub, because Matt's hands were going like that. He wanted to pick her up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can imagine a little bub being brought out to you. And then I forgot to change it and she was whinging. And I said, "Oh, she's restless." And he said, "Oh, you need to..." Matt said to me, "You probably need to change a bum." Because it was 10 years since I'd had a little one, you know.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that they get...
What age was she again, sorry?
6 weeks.
6 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, 6 weeks. Yeah. So, yeah, that was a wonderful day, really, because I was well then. By then I was a lot better, keeping better. And then Matt was young, and the boys were sort of old enough to sort of look forward to having a little sister. I think Douglas got a little bit jealous a bit later.
Yeah.
More than even, I can't remember even.
What makes you think that, Grandma?
Your dad's always been a bit more needy, sort of, than Ian.
Oh, okay, so we just got a bit more needy around that time. And then...
Yeah. He's I don't think he did to start with. As more as she got a bit older, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because I think big brother, I'll look after you, sis, sort of that sort of thing. Anyway, but
Your dad never did anything by half. He got interested in radios. Can you remember? Did you hear about that?
Really?
Ham radios. God,
We had a little shack down the back, his CB radio, and he was in there, but
I remember that.
You remember that?
Because he had a when he was older. Too.
Yeah.
he
He'd
was in
spend
there
hours, and all I did
all
was...
night, not hours, all bloody night, and he was talking to people in South Africa and in Canada and bloody.
But it was always the same conversation. Where are you? Where are you? What's your name? Where are you? What's the weather like? And there was another question. About
Well, this-
4 things they used to repeat to every person.
but
That was it.
there was a whole rigmarole. There's some things you weren't allowed to ask, apparently, if you're talking to
Yeah.
on the radio to people.
Oh, well, I'd think it was espionage.
There was a whole protocol of what
Yeah.
you could and couldn't say
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah,
And
but he used to spend hours out there in the shed. He did too. Forgot that too. Should have remembered that. And then later on, when Leanne grew older, she used to like rescuing pets, and we fed had that same little shack. We used to have birds in there and tried to keep them alive.
Yeah.
You know, they'd fall out of the nest and she'd rescue them, and bring them in, and we'd managed to survive, make them survive. And then the next thing you'd know, they'd be dead out on the road. They'd get killed. Actually, that was the last time though. She found one that had fallen out. It was out in our footpath, and she picked it up and put it inside. And she said, "Oh, Mum, you know, what do you reckon?" And I said, "Well, we can try. Put it down in the shack and we'll feed it." And she got worms out of our compost thing and fed it, and then it used to fly around in there. But oh no, the interesting bit though with that was, before that was the last time I'm forgetting.
busted now. Let's
We'll go. Oh,
You go.
I'm telling the story anyway.
You have to unplug me, can't
I'll leave it in, Grandpa. Let us listen to you pee.
Okay.
You can just pull the thing out, Grandpa.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
Oh, Grandma's running the tap.
I can always isolate
Yeah.
one of these.
Anyway, we thought the mum, I said to Matt, there's a bird hanging around with a mouthful of worms sitting on the fence there. Wonder if it's the mum. I said, look, we'll put the box back outside there and just see if she comes down. Blow me down, we put it up, Matt put it up in the fork of a tree that was out there then. And the mother come and fed it again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was interesting. We didn't think once we'd handled the bird and everything. But she did, she reared it. But then, like I said, sadly, when it started to want to be out of the nest, it flew out on the road and got squashed.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, I hated finding that.
Yeah,
But, you know,
bird
but-
stories usually don't end up.
Yeah,
I had.
well, not with people's places, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any? Was there any other animals that were brought in?
Yeah, Leanne brought a chicken home from school that she was supposed to rear, and it turned out to be a rooster. And it used to attack people when they come here, or attack me if I was
Did it
hanging.
have a name?
No, I don't think it did. Do we? Well, except from bastard. What did Leanne's rooster that she brought the little chicken home and
I
reared?
don't think it had a name. No, but it grew pretty big.
It grew big,
Aggressive too.
Yeah, I used to take the broom out with me and it'd start to do a little dance before it went, yeah. And I'd have the broom and I'd go, tick, you know, and it'd go away. And it would just run around the backyard eating the bits and pieces, worms and things. And then, but it used to sneak up under visitors' cars. And they'd come out and attack them when they went to go home.
Oh,
You know, this
really?
thing would come, yeah. So in the end, Douglas shot it. He took it down, he dug a hole, we dug a hole down the back, because I said it's too dangerous. If someone come with little kids, you know, because there were a lot of little kids around, of course, at that age. So
Should have taken it to the Philippines. It would have been a good fighter. Would have made a few dollars.
But all the friends that took theirs home, the cat ate one, and another one just died of neglect or something, and then the whole school was con. The farmer got rid of his roosters, didn't he?
Oh, so that's just
Yeah, he just,
how they do
yeah,
it.
come on, this is the thing. See how long you can make this chicken last, you know?
They sacked all the chickens and all the roosters got chucked out. And then they go, oh, well, and some of them, sometimes they colour them too, but they'd make them blue and pink and
Yeah,
take
they
them to
didn't do
school.
that. They
And
didn't.
they
They
sell
did-
them to the kids, you know.
But they just said to take them home and see if you could rear them. But Leanne's, I think, was one of the few that survived. Well, not for long. Oh, yes, she did. Well, we had that for a couple of years.
Did any of them? Do you remember any incident of any of your kids getting in trouble at school?
Oh, yes. Your dad.
So let's go with what one raises to the mind first?
Douglas.
When you think of,
Douglas.
Doug was always in trouble.
Douglas.
Well, do you remember one where you
No.
speak to teachers?
No, there was an irate dad come to the back door with his son. Your son knocked my son off the pipe coming home from school and he broke his teeth.
Oh, yes.
I demand that you pay for the repair bill. And I knew kid had rotten teeth, and they tried to get us to pay for the lot. I said, oh look, that's not. I said, I know. What was his name?
McConnell's.
Yeah, but what was the boy's name?
David McConnell, isn't it?
No, that was the other brother.
Oh, anyway,
one
Mark McConnell.
No, that wasn't right either. Anyway, the boy that was friendly with Doug had bad teeth. I knew that.
Yeah.
But he broke his front tooth, of course, wouldn't you know, fallen off, because Douglas had wanted him to give him some of his treats at lunchtime or something, and he wouldn't give them to him. So when they come home, he pushed him off the pipe that they used to walk across. And this, of course, poor Matt didn't know what was trying to struck him with this fella at the door, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Dad.
I fucked him off.
Recount the story.
He just said, "Oh, fuck off," you know.
What were you doing when he came over? Do you remember
I was
that?
sitting here and I'd knock on the door,
yeah.
and this bloke was really aggressive.
Yeah, he was. He was like,
What are you going to do? You're going to be paying for this? And I just bloody closed. I said, oh, fuck off, and closed the door and walked away. And then
left me to sort it out, didn't you? Yeah. So I went over and I said, look, I know Douglas did the wrong thing. I said, but I know your son's teeth. You're trying to get us to pay for repairs that Douglas didn't cause.
So it was before this door existed?
So we paid for
no, it
half.
was at the back door, wasn't it?
Yeah, because you're saying the back door.
Yeah.
So
No, he went to the back door.
Okay, but
The fella went to the back door.
This door though.
Can't remember that, to be honest.
Yeah. But, yes,
But he went to the back
you
door
were
anyway,
talking
yeah.
about-
Yeah, but Matt opened this with this man a bit like the chook, you know. The man was,
Yeah.
so
We saw this bloke not so long ago. He had a few.
that was the young fella, McConnell.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, I heard...
Chris was the young
Chris.
I
fella.
heard, okay, right, but in this story you've said that you've turned around and was just like, I remember hearing that you had a screwdriver in your hand.
No, that was.
That was another one.
No, that was
was
something
different.
else. That was something else. That was.
Wasn't the fella?
No, that was Bazzanotti.
What was
Bazzanotti
he
came to
complaining about?
complaining about some bloody thing. I can't remember what it was all about, but he
Oh, well, that might have been fella.
there was something about the dog or something.
That dog killed his pet.
Something.
Yeah.
And he come.
Yeah, oh,
He'd
yeah.
say,
What kind of pet was it?
A rabbit, I think.
I had a bloody big.
Yeah, well,
A dog? Oh.
No, it was a rabbit.
I had a big screwdriver in my hand. And that bloody bloke come to the bloody door, and I just happened to bloody carry it with me as I went at the door, you know. And he bloody aggressive about the bloody dog. You. And I said, you see this? This will be right through your guts if you don't bloody.
Pissed off.
Pissed off, and that was he was off.
Like a man to do.
Were you actually like red face shouting?
Yeah, you haven't seen your dad when he's really angry.
I've
With
never seen-
Grandpa, and his eyes bulge when he gets really angry. They sort of Popeye. They used to call him Popeye. Little Popeye Dutch cunt. They called him on the phone one time, and he heard him. And he rang him back and he said, "This is a little Popeye Dutch cunt telling you you better get your ass down and do that job I told you to do." Yeah. Yeah. That's right, I forgot that episode. That was a dog we had. And he used to wander
Fellow
off.
was called, was
He
it?
was fella, F-E-L-L-A.
What breed?
He was like a red setter, but he was black. You know, red setter dogs. They're sort of
Long-haired
fairly
retriever.
big dog with long sort of. They're rather lovely. He was a lovely dog. Anyway, but he's bad having a fetching stuff, and he used to bring shoes home. He'd take off because we didn't shut him up like you do now. They just roam free.
Yeah.
And he'd come home with. He'd go out to the abattoirs and come home with a pig's head and be on the back veranda in the morning.
Pig's head.
Dead chooks that had been slippers.
Killed chooks and paint tins.
Matt had a big tea
I
set.
had a great big square box called a tea chest. Have you seen a tea chest?
Doesn't matter,
Made out
a
of
big square
plywood.
box.
They used to bring.
Use it for transport now.
Transport tea in that. It was a great big square box.
Yeah, plywood.
I had one of them in the garage, and all the stuff that the dog bring home, I put in that box.
And then take it up to the tip
And then
every
take it
now
to
and
the tip, and
again.
every bloody few weeks I had to go and empty that box.
Yeah, but except for the dead chooks and things, you had to bury them or something.
Always buried them.
I don't know whether you buried them or put them in the bin.
A cow's head, even
Yeah,
brought
cow's
home.
head, yeah, pig's head, cow's
From
head.
the abattoir.
That morning.
Horn still on.
Chooks, yeah.
And You know, the great big paint tins that are ones about that high.
The 10 litre ones
The
or
10
something.
litre paint tin. He jumped over the fence with that in his mouth. They had a little front fence about that high.
Yeah.
And the dog was out on the footpath bringing the paint tin home.
Yeah.
And he had the paint tin and he jumped over the fence with the tin.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, oh no, he was, but
And
he was
then
a
he'd
worry.
drop it here and then...
Yeah, because I know one time the neighbour over the road caught him nicking his slippers, or a slipper, and Bill Houston chased him. You're fucking
What
not-
about Batesy over the road?
what did he?
Bill Bates.
Yeah, what did he steal from there?
He had a doormat.
Oh, dog.
And the dog is running along in the middle paddock here with this bloke's doormat, and he's in his underpants after him. That was
I'd forgotten
hilarious.
that one. Yeah, because you can imagine that, can't you? Dogs big, there's a big, you know, like that, well, bigger than that. Yeah. Oh no, he was a real worry, and yet he was a beautiful dog. He got hit by
Photos of fella?
probably somewhere. But he's
He actually got
But
crook. He had a seed up his. He had a
yeah.
crook leg.
He had to have him-
He got a seed in between his toes, and it travelled right up his leg.
Seed.
You know those
Yeah.
grass seeds that have got a point on
Yeah.
them on the end,
It travelled.
like a feather. You know, like a.
we had it operated on. We took him to the vet and got it operated on a couple of times, but it kept getting infected and that.
Oh,
In the
really?
end, we had to have him euthanized.
How old?
Oh, we had him for a long time. We
So
had
was he
him.
an old dog when he
No, wasn't
Not old, but
wasn't old,
yeah, no, he
middle-aged,
wasn't
yeah.
old, but he was. We had him for say 8 years, perhaps.
He was a relief to get rid of.
Well, he was
you
a
know,
bit
so-
of food. Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, well, at least the disappearing things in the neighbourhood stopped, I guess. The neighbours probably went few.
I had more single slippers
Yeah.
and shoes than anywhere.